We're going to look fresh. All right, you're going to talk about the numbers, the numbers. Hi, everyone. I'm Manny Apollonio. I'm here with my friend Jim Argo. Jim Argo is an expert in mortgages, and I wanted to talk to him today because I have a audience, my pre-retirees, those 55 and over, that have questions around mortgages and what they might be able to qualify for. And so, Jim, tell us a little bit about your experience first, and then we'll dive into some of these questions, if that's okay.
Super, super. So happy to be here, Manny.
Thanks for being here. My second ever special guest.
Post-COVID.
Post-COVID, here we
Plus.
are.
Well, I've been a mortgage broker. I've been in mortgage lending since 1984. And of course, I have seen a lot. I've seen many types of mortgage lending, many different situations in the economy through which we successfully and unsuccessfully navigate the mortgage process. And now, here we are in another new sort of a moment in lending, and we have a lot of people, the baby boomers, et cetera, moving towards retirement, and there are different ways to help people obtain financing.
Thanks, Jim. So, okay, let's talk about these baby boomers. Do you see some of the specific challenges they might find when it comes to lending?
Well, as you and I were discussing, almost no one has a pension anymore.
True.
Right? So proper management of retirement assets is really important, and people need help to make sure that is done correctly.
I think I can help with
You
that.
think so? You look like a person who knows how to navigate this. No, we really need help. A lot of people do need help because most people, I don't pay much attention to the management of my retirement assets. I let somebody do that. I mean, I do mortgages, so to speak, very well. I enjoy it. It's helping people, and that takes a level of expertise, and I allocate to the professionals what they're good at. And this is one of those things that are really important, to let somebody like you take the wheel, collaborate with your client, and help people grow and do the right thing. So on the lending side, what is going on is unless you had a career in the military, in civil service, or a good old institution, maybe like PG&E, or you have a retirement through any of the unions, all of those are a smaller and smaller category as we've moved through time, right? So those people, we use their pensions. People that have Social Security, that income is also used to help people qualify. Depending on the level of income in general, sometimes in Social Security, we can give someone a gross number. We can gross it up as opposed to the net number based on that. And then there's another interesting level of helping people qualify for financing, usually in the larger loan category, and that is called the depletion of assets.
Okay.
Where we take someone's assets under management, if they're of or close to a retirement age, then we can almost in a way use an actuarial table and allocate portion of their retirement nest egg each year to an income.
All right.
Okay. And then there's the RMD piece too, required minimum distribution.
That's right. So for the folks at home who are not familiar with a required minimum distribution, when you hit 73 years old, the IRS says, great that you have a retirement account, but now you need to start taking money from it. And they want you to take money from the account so that they can charge you income tax, but the income can be used
Absolutely.
to qualify.
It is, because one of the basic definitions of lending is, one of the tests is, does this have an ongoing and consistent nature to it? So if you have that RMD performing for you because you have to, that meets the ongoing aspect. You typically have to receive one distribution. You already started it. You don't have to have a history of it.
Okay.
But you have to initiate it and have logged in one, and then they will allow you to count that towards income for qualifying going forward.
Okay, so that's really interesting to me because I'll have clients who are looking for a mortgage and have not yet tapped their retirement account. And you're saying a history of taking withdrawals from the retirement account isn't necessary.
According to the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac rules, and they are the foundational template, not every investor group follows that, but most do. And once you have received one of those, they say, okay, you've begun, because there's really no going back on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in another sense, we have to look at other types of income. If you're self-employed, they want a 2-year history. If you're receiving spousal spousal support or any kind of post-marital dissolution income. They want a much longer history of that income.
Yeah. So that gives our investors at home, our pre-retirees, kind of some latitude in determining what their income should be.
And that is one of those things that is part of the toolbox that you have for people, is to help them figure, you can do this, you can do that. There's so many ways to do things. And then, as you were speaking about earlier, you could simply cash in on your Northern California real estate and go someplace else and be debt free as well.
This brings up a really good point, because I want to talk about like the different scenarios you find pre-retirees in that initiate this conversation. So I guess my question is, in your experience, what life events are happening?
A real typical life event is a transfer of wealth.
Okay.
Someone passes away. The adult children, who might be in their 50s or late 60s even, are dividing up mom and dad's assets. What do we do? Do we pay off our mortgage? Do we go buy something else? Not everybody is interested in staying where they grew up, if they grew up here, for example, speaking about Northern California, the Bay Area. What do we do with that transfer of wealth? Do we buy something? Do we buy something here? Do we just simply use it as a nest egg? The more common thing is older folks are passing away, and a lot of them have done pretty well.
Yes.
And that transfer of wealth to their children definitely is a conversation that's going on a lot. A lot of times the children don't necessarily get along.
So on my show, we talk about the weirdness of money. We talk about how people get really weird sometimes when an inheritance.
Frequently.
Right. So, okay, walk me through, and you don't have to name names, but like a scenario where maybe because of your expertise, you're able to make it a little bit smoother.
Well, if we go back to the Bible, there's these two people named Cain and Abel.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, Cain and Abel didn't hit it off, to the point where I think Cain slew Abel or something like that. It doesn't usually get that bad, but I have to tell you that as long as I've been in the business, it is alarming how frequently, once the hinge pin, the matriarch passes away, things come unglued. It's very interesting. I was very surprised to learn how frequently that happens. And it's a challenge. And people start to not get along, or they remember slights or things that were said, or and so on and so forth. And then there's these assets that have to be separated out or distributed. And you quickly find out how weird it can get when it didn't have to be. And there's plenty for everyone. But unfortunately, people just sometimes don't step up or step in and become an obstacle, or all sorts of variations.
I like what you said, it doesn't have to be. So let's talk about like what you would recommend to pre-retirees in this situation.
There's an asset that's been inherited and it needs to be discussed.
Yeah, it needs to be discussed.
The most common advice I give people, and I hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears, is always take the high road. Announce your good intentions and behave with good intentions. Not like in a ham-fisted soap opera kind of way, but express sincerity for things to work out well, and kindness and compassion. And if there's something that needs to be left behind, it's a great opportunity to open up the doors of understanding, if forgiveness. I'm not a counselor, but it just works better if everybody says, this is a new moment. I want to let you know, let's say you're my brother. And I said, listen, Manny, I know we didn't always get along. But, let's do the right thing by each other. I really want that. And a lot of people don't say that. They don't have that conversation, but that's how it begins.
So I talk about this with my couples. I work with like newly married folks, and they're trying to talk about money, and it's awkward. And this is another money conversation, and it can get awkward. And I like what you're saying. You're saying, be a little bit vulnerable, be compassionate, be honest with your family member.
Be kind.
It's not easy. Just be
Just be kind to each other,
Yeah, in coaching, I use this technique called an intentional conversation. So I'll have like the spouses in front of each other, and I'll have them hold each other's hands, and I'll be like, okay, so first you have to start out and you have to tell each other that you love each other before you have this conversation, because at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to achieve, right? Like, we're going to have this awkward conversation around money. If this is with your brother, you're having the awkward conversation, but it's ultimately like, I'd like to maintain a relationship with you, and have a way to split these assets that's equitable.
And another way of taking it to another level is I want our children who are cousins to get along and enjoy each other's company too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another thing that happens too. There's a
Yeah.
split of assets and first cousins who should be like brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Sometimes are not because of the what I call the silliness of their parents.
Yeah. A lot of money, bad behavior can be inherited.
Do you get a lot of the heirs problems?
Yeah, so I'll get situations where heirs will say, I'd really like to take over the family house and I need a way to buy out my brothers and sisters. So that's like usually the scenario I see.
Yeah, and you know what I find? That's a scenario that I get a lot. And frequently what happens is they come back and they say, "Whoa, that didn't go so well." And all of us, and that's usually the moment where they discover how weird
Yeah.
money can get.
Yeah.
I have this retired couple with pensions, husband and wife, and with adult children, and they're inheriting mom's homes in the Bay Area, and they really wanted to see they were brought to me for retirement planning in a real estate debt
Sure.
scenario, and it was like, okay, well, you could do this, you could take the assets and you could buy them out, you could just take the assets and do your own thing. What they did learn was that when they approached the siblings about acquiring mom's home and they thought it made sense, it brought up issues with the other siblings who would have been brought up. What is it worth? Are you not paying enough? The typical stumbling block is it's best. I mean, personally in my family, I've been through it a few different times. And after the first time, I realized if you're going to study this, study it very privately with good, intelligent people, and then think how it would play out if you present it.
What I'm hearing there is do your research.
Do your research. And do it privately.
Get your lending lined up, maybe already get your realtor, right? Get it appraised. Is that what you're saying?
But all of those, that's absolute. But what I'm saying is also in addition to that, get it appraised. Well, you think it's worth X.
Sure.
I think it's worth X prime.
Yeah.
She thinks it's worth XX. How do we come to terms with that?
Yeah.
Mechanically, forget about the personal piece, but mechanically, one way to do it, well, first you have to gauge how agreeable is everybody. Sure. If there's mistrust, well, then it's probably the sale of the property. Then you get to choose how do we find a realtor who we all agree on, so on and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I've been through this several times as professionally and personally, and different ways have been the path.
Yeah.
Depending on the personality.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, well, you could have 3 professional realtors.
Sure.
Give you what we call a broker's opinion of value.
Yes.
And then I say, if you take that path, do understand that at least one of those real estate professionals will be having a conversation with the gold in mind and maybe trying to lead people to believe that it's worth this amount of money.
Of course, yes.
And you have to take that into consideration.
When commissions are involved, people can inflate numbers.
And not to disparage the realtor in the conversation, but there's different strategies within each of those, let's say 3 realtors of how to price something.
Yes.
Right? So let's say we leave out greed or personal enrichment out of that for the realtor, but say there's going to be 3 different approaches. And then if there's 3 different heirs, they might see things differently. Another way to do it, instead of getting 3 realtors to give price opinions, would be to have 3 appraisals. And this is also interesting because an appraisal can cost $500 to $700 depending on the size of the property. Then you find out who's willing to write a check for 3 appraisals, and that's a tell. That helps too, actually. Sure. It's like, nobody wants to write a check. Okay, that informs us as to how you all get along and where you are all sitting in this world. Right.
Yeah, it's the first little expense, and
make a note,
like a little litmus.
And again, be scientific about it. Don't be emotional about it. Take this in just as best as you can, just as information.
Sure.
This idea seemed to be acceptable. This idea was a button that we do not want to go near. Yep. This idea seemed agreeable. And as I said, be kind and work towards a resolution. Now, that couple that I was referring to earlier, they proposed buying 1 or 2 of mom's homes from the other siblings. Well, they came back to me 2 weeks later and said, Jim, what we're going to do is not that. We learned that everybody didn't have the same idea about what things were worth. And I didn't even go into the possibility possibilities of what history these folks had with their siblings
Sure.
and so on and so forth. But it was there, and I didn't want to go there with that conversation, did not need to. The point of the matter is, hey, you know what? We're going to get X amount of dollars out of the sale of these homes. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to buy something else
Yeah.
on our own. That's the best path. And they came to that decision on their own. And I know by the things that weren't said that it was a bit of an epiphany to them.
All
But they
right.
did the right thing in that
Yeah.
they avoided that. I don't know what their process was in vetting various realtors to sell those properties, and that's another story.
Jim, what I'm getting here is that you have high emotional intelligence. You got to have people skills to navigate these sticky situations. And why is it more beneficial to work with an independent, what do we call you? Independent?
In the lexicon of my profession, I'm a mortgage loan originator, but I prefer to refer to myself as a senior loan advisor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the alternative for some folks is they don't know where to turn and they
Yeah.
just go to some big commercial outfit.
Yeah, you want to go where there's a good variety of options. Here we are in the summer of 2023, and this is an interesting moment in the history of
Yeah.
banking in the United States of America. I know different loan officers, commercial and residential loan officers that have left one bank and gone to another because on the inside, these banks are experiencing different things. So you don't want to go to a place where you don't know that you're safe. You might be comfortable with the brand,
Sure.
but you have no idea what your menu options are if you can refer to the loan programs and the advice. I mean, if I were working for a bank, I would tell you the 2 or 3 products that I have are the best on the planet.
Sure.
And generally speaking, an employee of one of the major banks cannot dispense life advice and is not going to.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
for me, because I'm so long in the business, I just get to enjoy listening to what people have on their mind,
Yeah.
thinking about what might be good for them and giving them suggestions.
Yeah.
Because I can help with finance. And frankly, in those rare situations when I can't help them, I'll tell them. And it's
Yeah.
okay. Because if I'm so frequently listening, with my mind and my heart to help people, 8, 9 times out of 10, I'll be able to help those people. But just giving somebody, because I don't want people to be intimidated. I don't want people to feel like they're not the smartest person in the room.
Sure.
That is not, I don't want to be that person. I don't like it when I
Right.
am that
Yeah.
person. And I am that person sometimes. And I don't want to be that person. I don't want anybody who's coming to have a conversation with me about financing to feel that they should be afraid or intimidated. It's nothing about that. I mean, life should be about being kind and compassionate and helping people.
Yeah.
And then they can, of course, I'm going to say this, some come to somebody like me who can help you with your best interest at heart and in mind.
Yeah.
And when you've got a limited array of products to offer or ideas to offer, that typically isn't the best place to go.
Yeah. There's like a phrase for it. It's like when you only have this product seems to work for everybody. You know what I mean?
You give somebody a hammer, everything's a nail.
There we go. That's it.
Uh.
I knew it had to do with building something. Anyway, all right. So I've been trying to avoid the question around interest rates because it's on everybody's mind.
They're ephemeral. They all change all
They
the time.
all change. Yeah. So that's okay. Can you speak to that rates change?
Yeah, money moves around globally, and the central banks of the world have pumped a historic apex of liquidity into the world over the past several years since COVID. Now they've got all this excess capital. It created inflation, absolutely. Russia, Ukraine, that didn't help things. Constraint on energy, constraints on food supplies, grain. Those are all both highly inflationary things, although they don't always get counted in with the Federal Reserve's measure of what inflation is. But we live in an inflationary moment, and the Federal Reserve has really, really been aggressive. Some say overly so, but it doesn't really matter. You cannot fight the Fed. The Fed is doing what it's doing. Some say as we are here in August of 2023, is the Fed done increasing interest rates? Well, that increase in interest rates made a lot of different types of money and a lot of different types of borrowing very expensive.
Right.
And it also puts a real pressure on lending institutions in the forms of depository banks who are important for lending commercial real estate, businesses, and residential property. It really has whacked out their capital requirements. Mm-hmm. So there's a conservative approach, a mood right now this year with lending, because lenders are really not delighted to part with their capital. Sure. We saw what happened with Signature, Silicon Valley Bank, and First Republic. We may not be done with those sorts of situations yet. Those were the victims.
Sure.
Those three big ones were the victims. And the lesson was to all other banking institutions in the country is to hang on to your capital because you need to meet capital requirements. And lending your money out was very detrimental to Silicon Valley Bank and to First Republic Bank, the way they were lending it out. It seemed like a good idea at the time. The market turned because of the Fed. And as Warren Buffett says, you don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. Well, the tide went out. There are a lot of poorly clad banks.
All right, so I've got a few parting thoughts for you, but I'm a planner, and when I'm working with my pre-retirees, real estate comes up, of course, and we want to talk about all of our options. And Jim here says, plan, get the research, definitely do not leap before seeking advice. Any parting thoughts from you?
Have fun with it. I mean,
Sure, yes.
yeah, you want to do it in advance. You want to be thoughtful about it. And just because of my personality the way I am, and it's just make it enjoyable. I mean, I think except for the painful lessons in life, some lessons are really absorbed better when they're done in a pleasant way.
Sure.
We could do it this way. We could do it that way. And when it's light, under duress, under pressure,
Sure.
not a way to learn things, not a way to, but I'm saying, do it. Do it with openness of mind and openness of heart. And I think the outcomes are just going to be better. And don't be in a rush. Do it in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like that. I do like that. So, if you have anything you're going to do with real estate, get advice first, especially if you think you might be needing to get a mortgage to go through with your plans. I want to thank Jim for being here. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
And thank the City Club for letting us be here in their game room. If you liked anything you heard here, it would be great if you could subscribe, like it, share it, hit that notifications button. Anything else you want to say, Jim?
Interest rates, they will come down.
Okay.
They will come down. And they will go up. But they will come down next. That's the next thing.
Everything is temporary.
Yes, everything.
Everything is temporary. All right. And just like that, this show is temporary. So we're going to head out and enjoy the rest of our beautiful day here in San Francisco. Thanks for being here. I'll see you on the next show.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.